It is a couple minutes after 9 on October 3rd. We'll call the Wright County Board of Commissioners to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. We have a good number of people in attendance here. We'll go right to it here. We have the minutes from the Committee of the Whole on 9/18. We have the minutes from the County Board meeting on 9/19. We have the minutes from the Drainage Authority public hearing on 9/20, and we have the minutes from the County Board meeting on 9/26. We can approve them individually or collectively. I will entertain motions or corrections.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve those all in one.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved unanimously. Today's agenda, would anyone like to make any corrections, additions to today's agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
Second.
second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved unanimously. Today's consent agenda, would anyone like to remove anything from today's consent agenda for further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just one thing to remove for just a question. Letter A, number 2, the SRO contract.
All right. Anything else like to be removed?
And I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with A2 removed for discussion.
All
I'll
right.
second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark, second by Commissioner Dietrich for the approval of the consent agenda with the removal of A2. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda approved unanimously. Item A2, the authorized signatures on school resource contracts with the Elk River, Buffalo, Maple Lake, Monticello, Rockford, and St. Michael school districts. This is a contract that was reviewed by the county board, I believe, about close to this time last year, and that rate was approved at that time, and the contracts were sent out to the school districts for the subsequent contract year. Chief, would you like to discuss any more on that? So the history on this one, this rate is been kind of flat for a couple of years because of COVID. And then we had a discussion more about it, trying to work its way to become a little bit more in line with where we wanted that rate to be. But we tried to make a move forward on it about 3 years ago, but COVID came in, school district funding was kind of low. Correct.
Mr. Chair, if I could get to my point of
Sure.
why I was asking, and so the chief isn't guessing, but, so in looking at the contract yesterday, and we had a assistant administrator I was talking with, and noted that the rate per hour was $39 an hour, which is now the starting wage for a deputy. And the cities, of course, we had a lot of conversation about that went to $105 an hour, so we got the $68 difference, and then the 2 sergeants that aren't figured in there. So I was just, in case we get asked an explanation because of the difference. I'm not arguing it, but just because we didn't have as much conversation about this rate, and knowing now that the base rate is $39, and if we looked at the 10 or 11 SROs in the school, I'd have to think that the majority are probably not base rate deputy wage. So that's my question.
Yeah, so that question was answered previously this year at a Ways and Means Committee meeting that I think you were at, Commissioner. We discussed the history and the contract rate, the history of the contract rate, where we're looking to get it to, and the reason that it's 9/12 of a starting deputy wage. But I can go through those again if you'd like.
Well, just generally, just an explanation, because it's still in the minds of some city, and when you see it in front of you on paper, it's just a big difference now.
But I want to remind the chief that the rate was actually set by the board. I sat in that actual meeting, and looking at that meeting, which there were subsequent meetings that took place regarding that one multiple years prior to that. And we actually got to the point where we had a number of superintendents that came in the room and said that if we raised that rate any higher, they would forego the contracts altogether. And that's where we as a county board stepped back and said, you know what, we want to have the officers in the schools. They are not mandated to have that. And if we would have pushed that rate any higher, we would end up getting no funding from the schools, and we'd be still doing the same work in the schools, except for just not getting any compensation for it. So that's why that rate will never be a true reflection of the cost of the deputies, because the schools are not mandated to have that service in there. They are being good partners with us by helping fund that, but they are not required to do that. So that is where the county board pushed it at one point to a point where the superintendents came in and said that, wait, we can't afford this anymore. So we have to be very delicate with what we charge the schools for that, and that's where that rate is. Now, could we have further discussions with that? Since this last contract, labor market has changed substantially. I'm sure the superintendents would be open to that conversation, but you can't compare the city contracts to the school contracts because they're apples and oranges, so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, in addition, if we just look at the school rate, then for a future meeting, perhaps, but the $39 stands out to me because of the base rate compared to what is the actual hourly rate of the 10 that are working in the school. So for future consideration, at least, it seems like if we would look at more of an average of the rate that the deputies are making that are actually in the schools or across the sheriff's office, I guess that's what drew attention, is that flat 39 as the lowest paid deputy, and that isn't actually the rate of everybody working in the school.
Well, as the board chair pointed out, that was the rate that was voted on by the board. That's why that rate exists. That's why the contract is what it is.
Okay. All right. So for future discussion at the next appropriate meeting, then I'm good with that. But that's because I know that there's been a lot of attention and there is that discrepancy we can't get away from. So that's it. So
Chairman
I don't have
Vetch.
anything else.
Chairman Vetch, I think, though, we should maybe have a discussion with the schools for the next calendar year, because they have gotten funding from the state. Some are going out for a levy, not sure if that'll pass or anything, but just something to have the discussion with the superintendents to see, if we could just bump that rate up a little bit, being as we've not done it since pre-COVID time. I just think it's just doing our due diligence and having that conversation with the superintendents, just kind of like we did with administrators and the mayors. We should also, let them know that we've given them a big raise and, figure out what their commitment is to having those SROs. I mean, those SROs are putting their necks out with this new legislation. So they also know, the superintendents also know that it's more of a risk for them and a risk for us to have them there. So I think in the near future, we should have that discussion.
And Commissioner Holland, to your point, it is one of those ones that'll be scheduled the first part of next year. We regularly review those contracts, have the conversation. Sometimes we bring superintendents in, sometimes we don't. But to this point, that a lot has changed in the landscape over the last 3 years. This might be a good time to bring some of them in and have a little bit more of a deeper discussion on it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that's a good point because we know how it went over with the cities when they were brought in later rather than sooner. So, yes, I don't have anything further, so I'd make a motion to approve the contracts as written here.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark, second by Commissioner Holland to approve the SRO contracts with the listed school districts. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Chief. Yep. All right. Moving forward to the timed agenda item, we have the 9:05 declaring October 1st through the 7th of 2023 as National 4-H Week in Wright County.
Hi, good morning. My name is Renee Newman. I've been a Wright County 4-H volunteer for 24 years. My husband and I have served in many different areas over the span of 2 decades. After family involvement of over 20 years in the Wright County 4-H program, our youngest of 3 children graduated out this fall. All of them have had opportunities and successes at local, state, and national levels. They've traveled across the country with fellow 4-Hers and met others that share their passions. My own children have been so very fortunate to have been influenced by some of the best 4-H staff and mentors that the program has to offer. They have built them up and provided them with their own cheering section, which all kids need. Our children have taken advantage of the what seems like all of the 4-H programs over the years. And believe it or not, exhibiting at the county fair is a very small snippet of what 4-H offers. There are club meetings that teach leadership, community service that teach giving back, summer and winter camps, and spring and fall activities for fun while learning, project meetings, and most of all, learning how to work and grow together, along with some good old-fashioned competition is why they love 4-H so much. It is so exciting to see what the next 4-H opportunities will offer, and I look forward to seeing our younger 4-H friends hit their stride and find their success. Thank you for your time to highlight National 4-H Week.
Thank you, Renee.
Hi, my name is Tyler Luwaji, and I'm a member of the Hanover Honeybees 4-H Club in Hanover. The Wright County 4-H Youth Development Program is an organization for young people kindergarten through 1 year past high school graduation. Minnesota 4-H offers age-appropriate hands-on learning through projects and activities including 4-H clubs, special interest groups, and after-school programs, volunteering, civic engagement, community service, and much more. Wright County 4-H programs has 18 4-H clubs and over 700 members and 180 plus adult volunteers. The first week of October is annual celebration of National 4-H Week nationwide. This week is a time to celebrate the many great things about being a 4-H member. This week is also a time to showcase our organization in our communities and recruit new members. Clubs and members will be working hard to get the word out about 4-H. To assist with our promotion efforts, Wright County 4-H would like to ask the Wright County Board of Commissioners to declare October 1st through 7th, 2023 as National 4-H Week in Wright County. Whereas across the nation, our leaders' efforts to solve problems in their communities and to make a difference for their futures, and whereas 4-H is in Minnesota's largest youth development organization, growing leaders in every part of the state, recruiting 40,000 youth last year alone, and whereas in Wright County members, more than 700 members and more than 100 volunteers, and whereas Minnesota 4-H is committed to empowering youth with the skills they need to lead for a lifetime, and whereas youth in 4-H collaborate with carries adults to lead hands-on projects in areas like science, health, agriculture, citizenship, and the arts, and whereas the 4-H experience helps youth to make positive choices, communicate efficiently, build connections with peers and adults, and be meaningful contributors to their local and global communities. And now, therefore, I ask Derek Vitesk, Chairman of the Wright County Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim October 1st through 7th, 2023 as National 4-H Week in Wright County. I urge the people of this committee to take advantage of this opportunity to become more aware of this special program that enhances our young people's interest in their future as part of Wright County 4-H youth development, and to join us in recognizing this unique partnership between our communities and the University of Minnesota.
Thank you, Tyler. At this time, I will entertain a motion by the board to declare October 1st through the 7th of 2023 National 4-H Week in Wright County.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Dietrich, a second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just comment on the jacket. That alone should get you this resolution. That's impressive.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, it was so much fun to be at the county fair and see all of our 4-H staff and kids and parents having so much fun. That's probably one of the best days of the year, the summer for me, is to come and watch. And I have nieces and nephews in Hennepin County that bring their kids now to Wright County because they don't have 4-H in Hennepin County. So very proud of all the things that you do.
It goes without saying, part of your statement was the 18 diverse clubs across the county with over 700 members. That's worth noting. It's a good impact to the youth of the county, and hopefully that impact can continue to grow. So happily be able to declare it 4-H Week in Wright County. So with that, resolution, Commissioner Catchmark.
Aye.
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 Hi,
Aye.
All right. Motion passes unanimously.
picture time.
Picture time.
Stand in front of the board here. Yep, stand up here. Okay.
Hey, good job.
The more you do it, the easier it gets.
He has a nice voice. He could be a radio person.
Congratulations.
Wonderful. Lori?
Congratulations.
1, 2, 3. Oh. One more. Beautiful. Thanks, guys.
Next item on the agenda is the 920, would be Chad Hausman with the Highway Department, and approve the resolution of sponsorship as a fiscal agent for the City of Clearwater for Highway Freight Program application.
Good morning, Commissioners, and Derek, you nailed it. That's why I'm here today. City's applying for some funds for an upcoming MnDOT project in 2026, and if they're successful, we'll just need to be the fiscal agent like we have on previous projects across the county.
All right,
And it's a resolution, so we'll need yeah.
any discussion? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
All right, motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Resolution, Commissioner Shane?
Aye.
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 Resolution passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
All right. Next would be the 925, Matt Detchen, to schedule a public hearing on the redetermination of benefits for County Ditch 16 and County Ditch 19 near the French Lake area.
Yep. So, yeah, scheduling a public hearing. The earliest available dates for the viewers were the week of December 18th to have the public hearing. So there would be a public hearing scheduled, but then there would also be informational meetings with landowners, one-on-one meetings with the viewers before then. But you guys are required to attend the public hearing and schedule that date. So.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so this is one that's been discussed year in and year out, and you've probably been part of them. I've been part of a couple meetings. I was at French Lake for an evening meeting where the room was packed. I don't know if you were there. So I'm gonna follow along with the same trend that the citizens want an evening meeting. I mean, I'll go to, the 5 o'clock we did the last one. And I think that's reasonable. And the soonest date would be December 18th?
Yep. Now that week, obviously, that's the week of Christmas, so I would assume it'd probably be earlier in that week. Probably
Okay.
be the best.
So that's, for starters, what I would propose would be December 18th at 5 PM in the big room.
Sounds good to me.
I'm okay.
Is that a motion? Or?
Well, I was just for discussion, if it works
Discussion.
for
We're
people's
just, I mean,
schedules, but
taking people's schedules here, right, where he's just throwing some others that work for everybody. That Monday, December 18th.
at least we got 3. I'll make a motion to set that public hearing meeting for Monday, December 18th at 5 PM.
All right, December 18th. We have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? No discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Public hearing scheduled for 5 o'clock on December 18th.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. We're a couple minutes ahead here for the public hearing, so we'll have to wait a few minutes on that. With that, we'll kind of move down to the items for consideration. The first item would be to refer items to the October 10th County Board Workshop. And with that, we'll open up any discussion.
Just, Mr. Chair, I put together quite a few items. We should discuss scheduling some meetings. I've laid those out. As you know, I've solicited from departments legislative items, so we should look at a date for review by the board of that, as well as look at dates for meeting with our legislators. Also, a few items to discuss just before we have our commissioner meeting to discuss mileage options prior to that in November. Also, Initiative Fund was asked to come in during budget time. This was a date that worked for them, so we targeted the October workshop. We also wanted to follow up on the fee schedule, as we will be approving that in November. I wanted the board to have another chance to review that before we brought it to this room. Discussing also the Great River Regional Library Board and other commissioner appointments to boards. Thought it'd be good to discuss that process. And lastly, I had listed the third floor of the Government Center to discuss different arrangements up there, as well as I think it would be good to circle back on, we've done some analysis on the phone system, just kind of give a follow-up on that. So that's quite a myriad of topics. Are there others the board would like to add to the list?
I think this is a pretty robust agenda right there.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I have two things. The Baker Tilly reclass study. I'd like to get that to the next appropriate meeting, but I'm not in a hurry. And just to refresh people's memory, in the spring, I think when we voted to do it, I remember I had commented and clarified that we're gonna okay doing the study, but that doesn't mean we're approving the findings at that time. And you said, yes, that's what we're approving, is to do the study. And the cost is around $4,800 or whatever. So it's still open discussion on when or if or how we deal with the fruits of the labor per se. So that's, I'd throw that out there for Tuesday or a future meeting, but it's still hanging out there for us to address.
I think this would be a topic that I'd probably want to do outside of a workshop as an individual. And I guess I would want to have outside counsel available as well to discuss ramifications of it, because I feel like there could be possible legal consequences to it, because it's part of a policy that was adopted by the board to review positions, and now you have positions that have been appointed, and now the board is trying to unilaterally say no. Then I guess at that point we'd have to articulate what changes in those job descriptions should not be as part of it that they're not doing, and then remove that from their actual work. Otherwise, I feel that we may put ourselves into some sort of a legal quandary potentially.
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't mind going through it, not to go against anything in there, but I think just as a new commissioner to understand a little bit more in each of it. So I guess I would be open to the fact of discussion with this as well. However way you want to look at it legally is fine, just to make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do legally is fine. But as far as taking the time to look at things and to make sure we're doing it appropriately and understanding it, I would look forward to doing that.
And I can understand that point, because if we want to change the policy going forward and saying that we don't want to review these positions on the schedule going forward, we can change that policy. But the ones that have already been scheduled, we're kind of married to that policy, at least in the short term. Going forward, you could change that policy and have them reviewed every 2 years, every 3 years, or all of them at once. You can change the policy going forward, but the ones that have already in the queue and have already been reviewed, and trying to stop that process, I believe could put us into a little bit of a legal quandary.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in addition, I looked at couple of these in depth, and I'll point out, and I pointed out to staff, that there's some errors and omissions that are in this. If we are gonna go with, if people are gonna wanna say, sounds good, as is, where is, there's some problems there that I've found and that would need to be addressed also. There's also been comments about like a pay equity police or the boogeyman that would potentially come in and fine and or penalize us. And I'm still trying to contact which I've now narrowed down the state office, but I haven't heard back from them. So I think I want to hear a little more on source of data for the whole thing also.
Well, I think your biggest side of it is more of the fact is that you, with pay equity, is that if you're found out of compliance with pay equity, you could get an internal litigation from an internal employee against you because they'd use that data against you. That's what they would do. Or they would be basically saying that you're not being compensated for the jobs in your job description because of the board unilaterally decided not to take Baker Tilly's pointing system and they made individualized changes to it. In which case then, if you're out of compliance with pay equity, they could use that as part of their litigation cases against the county board.
And I'm trying to figure out what pay equity we're exactly talking about, because I've heard one description is it's underneath our roof only, and then I've heard another interpretation that it's across the state or other municipalities, people doing the same or similar job. And I'm trying to figure out what that equity actually is that's being evaluated.
The equity is within our own institution. So our own institution is taking somebody with X amount of education. If a job requires X amount of education, X amount of years of experience for this type of work, and there's another position in a totally different department that requires X amount of work and X amount of experience to have that role, that they are paid somewhat similarly. There can be some nuances based on the job descriptions, but they relatively have to be in a similar fashion. Now, I'm with you. I do not agree in pay equity laws because it allows the ability, it removes the ability for the market to determine wages. It ultimately allows wages to be entirely determined largely on education and experience in a job description, taking the market factor entirely out of it. But we're married to it by state statute, and that's where we have to be careful with it because varying too much from it puts us at a high risk for litigation. All it takes is one case, and it's going to cost us far more than these reclassifications potentially.
And I'm not saying against it, Mr. Chair, but it's more of a lack of understanding. I think I know more than I did in the spring. And I'm not going to speak for the three in the spring that just came on, but I remember how I was the first couple of months and the fire hose was turned wide open at that time. And if we asked the three, I don't know if they'd recall what we exactly talked about and decided on this deal. But I know what you and I had on the exchange part, that it was okay to do the study, and now we got the fruits of the labor. Is there a risk to not take it in its entirety? Well, I think in my research, I found some things that really need to be looked at that are actually contrary to meeting minutes and actually the setup with other jobs that we have in the county and the way it was portrayed to Baker Tilly.
In going back to that, now you have two things there. If it's not conveyed the way to it, and if the job descriptions weren't detailed to the way that it was articulated to you, that's an issue with you in administration and human resources. That's not necessarily a issue with the integrity of the pointing system itself holistically. So that's the part where I say I want the board to be very careful when looking at the pointing system and wanting to vary from that, because if you're going to vary from it, then you're going to have to do an entire comp and class study with a different agency. If you don't like Baker Tilly, there's handfuls of other different ones we can choose to use. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you don't do that and just try to develop your one internally, you'd have a hard time defending it in court. So making individual one-off modifications very quickly dilutes the value of that comp and class study and that third-party viewer to it. So that's the part I want the board to be very careful. And I think there's some misconfusion here in the job descriptions themselves and then the policy that we passed as a board to regularly review all the different classification, all the different job descriptions in the county on a regular schedule. So that policy that we adopted as a board, I believe it was back in May, that we would review all the different job descriptions over a 4-year period of time, and then would just keep rolling over. That was to prevent us from having to have a huge sticker price tag that we had in the past, because usually about every 10 years, we'd do 7 to 10 years, we'd do a holistic comp and class study, and we would be slammed with a $3 to $4 million price tag to get all of the employees back into the market rate and get their job descriptions updated, where if we did it in small bites with sections of the staff, it would keep us more in line with the markets and being able to retain and recruit employees on a regular basis, as well as the fact that it would prevent us from having huge spikes in our budget, which meeting our philosophical goal of trying to keep tax rates as flat and steady and consistent as possible. So those are the facts we're at right now. I'm just,
Commissioner Vetch, I asked this question of a few commissioners about what they do. Some use Baker Tilly, some use other ones. And they do their comp and class, review. But all three of these commissioners, counties, sit on them until they have their labor negotiations. So there's not any fear of racing to do it right away, because if other counties are sitting on them, I think as long as you're not, huge disparity between men and women, that's what a comp and class, from what I gather when I was on the school board, that's what you want to make sure that you're not, there's not a huge disparity between a job that a woman does and a job that men do. So, or ethnic, or that's what that is. And we're up to par on that. We're just going through now to see if we're, if we're staying on top of things.
and I can agree with the statement of saying sitting on them, but altering them is the part where I get more concerned with it. So that's the part where I would have to, if you were altering it, you'd have to have a definitive, articulable fact that says that this job description, it has this staff doing X task, and I can say definitively that they are not doing X task, and that should be removed. And then if they repointed it and it went down in points, then it could be a justifiable modification. But otherwise, sitting on it, yes, you can sit on it. I would ask that the board would change the policy, because right now the policy is that we approved and we postured to the staff of the county and to the citizens of the county that we will be reviewing these on the current schedule that we have passed as a board back in May. So if we want to do that differently, we certainly can change the policy as to when they're reviewed and when they're implemented, and I'm open to that discussion. I'm just more leery as to making modifications to those findings.
Mr. Chair. So let me be a little more specific for the whole board on this. The accuracy, for me, it's two things. It's the accuracy of the report and it's the timing, as Commissioner Holland talked about. But if we have a position that was determined to not be a supervisory position, and it's in meeting minutes that it's clarified that way, and it comes back from Baker Tilly that this position now supervises a person or multiple people, to me, that's a discrepancy. It's not accurate to the understanding of the board, and that's not just my personal opinion. So that's more than just the mic and the administration having a discussion.
And I can agree with that, and that statement, if that is the case and you want to articulate that, then you want to have that discussion about concerns you have about transparency with administration. That's a different discussion than having a discussion about the actual compensation and the policy and the implementation of it. Your more of your concern should be more about that and the transparency and what you are being informed of by administration and what is actually taking place.
Yeah, you call it transparency, I call it accuracy or errors or omissions, because that's it. And there's other examples that I would like to know. Hey, did Baker Tilly have this information on this position or didn't they? Because from what I'm reading in another case that affects several people, it's not portrayed to what it actually is. So to me, that's more of a board broad discussion in how the report came back. As far as what information did Baker Tilly have in the first place to base their decision on?
And so, and I can agree with, I want to basically remove the pieces, how we got to the information that went to Baker Tilly is more the concern. What we have as an output to it now is, I get your concern as to, can it be implemented, can it not be implemented? I'm very concerned about not doing it, but I'm more about having the discussion as to what is our role as a board going forward in that information that's submitted in, and then also about what was put into, how those were modified and how that is articulated to you. Because I mean, if it's making grossly changes, if you reclassified a position to add supervisory experience to it, then it's a discussion about whether it should have went to a personnel committee or came to the county board and saying that, you know what, this role, we've looked at this position, and this position has been doing supervisory work. It hasn't been in its previous job descriptions. Now we have to have a discussion. Should that job description be modified to make it accurate to the work that they're actually doing? Or do we actually have to remove that supervisory role from that work and making sure that that person is working within classification?
Because, Mr. Chair, our role will be ultimately to approve or not, or do later, $225,000 worth of pay raises based on this Baker-Tilly report. That's what I see our role to be. And, that's our deal. And I think that the whole board would be interested in the information that I've seen in reading just a couple of these. I haven't had a chance to read all. I think 11 out of 18 have been granted raises. And I just wanted to bring it up here before I went through the other 9, but if the rest looked at it and saw what I saw and compared to past information, I think there would probably be a consensus there.
Mr. Chair, if I can just make a few comments. So first, this is the first time we've gone through this process. When we did our comp and class study 5 years ago, we laid this out, but I think naturally there are going to be some growing pains as we're all learning how to move this forward. So I think what I'm hearing is that there's a desire to have a discussion about what has been the process thus far, and then how can commissioners give input or ask questions if they have those. I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that I don't think we want to be having open conversations in detailed about these positions and about how these things are valued. I think that could be problematic in a number of ways. But I think as staff, we could bring back to a future work session a conversation about what the process is, what we've done thus far, and then give an avenue if commissioners have questions, how we can ask those and get those resolved. Because in speaking with Commissioner Ketchmark, I think that there are some things that we should take a deeper look at. So I think it's valid to look at, and we'd be happy to put that information together for a future meeting.
I think that it's definitely worth the conversation. Obviously, there's concerns. I do want to say, though, being one of the few that's been here that went through the last comp and class study, I want people my fellow board members to understand how challenging that was from a variety of different factors. At the point where we went into the comp and class, we were so far out of market that we had dozens of open positions. We couldn't hire IT people for the life of us, as well as a variety of other positions within the county. And then on top of it, going into it, it becomes when you're doing it with the amount of different job descriptions that we have in the county, it becomes an extraordinarily huge, heavy lift from HR and the department heads to be able to review all those job descriptions in one shot. So then do you necessarily get the best accuracy to it? Probably not when you're putting that much workload on them in that short period of time. And then it comes the last factor is the cost factor. Because I tell you, at that time when we went into it, trying to implement something that was going to cost over $3.5 million to make a market adjustment, I about lost my mind a handful of times in a number of meetings because I was like, this is unreal. Like, how do you get to this? What we adopted right now here, is it better? Absolutely. Taking small bites at a cost of $200,000 a year versus every 7 to 10, 3.5. I'd rather do the 200,000 small bites. Now, is there potential issues in our new policy? Probably. Can we make tweaks to it to make it better? Absolutely. To Administrator Wilford's point, it's our first crack at it. We have to have more conversations about it. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just go right back to doing nothing, because we're going to find ourselves here, especially in the labor market now, than what it was 6 years ago, is way more fluid than then. And so we will find ourselves way out of market, way faster, and we will end up finding ourselves with a very, very compromised labor market. But that's the last I'll say with that.
Commissioner Vetch, I think we all agree that we want to stay competitive. I just think we just needed to understand the process. And I think what Clay said makes a lot of sense. And I think it'll be some good discussions, and so that we're brought, forward. And yeah, I feel bad that the commissioners ahead of you gave you that task of $3 million. That would be horrible.
So,
Mr. Chair, it sounds like the consensus of the board here is to schedule a labor negotiation strategy session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03.
Sounds good. You can set closed session labor negotiations. Like that's a great meeting. Urgency on it. I think we have some time between in October. I don't think this isn't something that has to happen within the next couple of weeks, but I think it's something between now and by the second week in November. So somewhere in that 6-week window.
And Mr. Chair, are we able to get the accuracy or whichever clarity, whatever way you want to call it, are we able to look at that during that time as well?
And I'm wondering, can we look at pardon me?
The clarity or accuracy or however, however way you want to describe it. Is that something we can look at during that time as well?
Mr. Chair, at this point, I think staff can take direction and we'll have the appropriate representatives in the room.
I think that'd be good. I think maybe John Edison might be worthwhile being in there for the conversation on this one.
Thank you.
All right. We'll just circle back with the date. We can set it next week at the.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we'll speak with council and get some dates where they're available and line that up. And then I assume that we're good with the other topics for workshop.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I had a couple more. Sorry, that was the first one, but I had talked with staff a little bit about the auction process. I know from past years as a deputy, it seemed like widely publicized. You knew it was happening. It was on scene, and there was staff from multiple departments that were working on fixing up cars and all that. Now it sounds like it's kind of been parted out, different ones across the county. At the very least, I'd want a discussion of, since we got multiple auction companies in Wright County, how is the auction company picked? I did talk with one yesterday. We do have at least 3 auction companies based in Wright County. 2 do online and live ones. One does online only. I asked the one, hey, are you interested? You ever been talked to? He said, yes, I'd be interested. No, I don't think I've been talked to. I think, we talk about economic development. There's economic support too, as a board, that if we've got in-county services that would apply, that we should give people a fair chance. I see other counties that actually list in a newspaper, hey, we're selling vehicles, boats, all these things. Now, I know there's specialized equipment, and talking with Administrator Matthijs, that Wright County doesn't have a good place, a good outlet for some of the big equipment. But that's my, more than I need to say maybe, but just a
Commissioner
discussion
Catchmark,
about
I think
the
that's
auction
definitely
process.
a topic that we could discuss. But I would ask if you'd be interested in letting us move it to November, giving us time for staff to collect all the different processes throughout the county so we can have a better, robust conversation. I feel like between now and next week, we won't be able to collect enough data to be able to have a good conversation about it, as well as the fact that we have a pretty robust agenda already for the workshop next week. And I don't believe that this is an issue that if it waited till the November workshop, that we would have any concerns with it.
I agree. I don't know the timing. I think we might have just got done with an auction. I'm not sure. So it's not an emergency, but just in the best interest of fairness, if nothing else, for the companies.
Sure. But are you okay if
Yes,
I ask you to move to November? You're good with that?
Yep.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Awesome. All right. So we'll do that. Give staff, if you have any questions about what information you can connect with Commissioner Catchmark and fellow board members to collect
Mr.
that.
Chair and members of the board, I'd like to actually put this on the commissioner project list. I was talking to Elizabeth Carls yesterday, our projects administrator, and we'd like to look at some best practices and see what other counties do and try to develop something rather than throwing out some assumptions and what's happening now. We'd rather come and make that work through a commissioner project list and have that come forward as a best practices guide for your review rather than a conversation. I've had conversations with what happens at the sheriff's office, kind of understand at the highway department, and then public surplus with Alan. So them are the 3 main departments that are going to be auctioning stuff off. I mean, there are others, of course, but if we can develop through the projects team and a project list that we can develop a best practices so that we can present that to you rather than having just vague conversation at a workshop would be
I think
my
that's a much
suggestion.
better idea. And I think what we'll do is we'll put it on the projects list and we'll just have like kind of more of a kickoff discussion about it in November,
Yep.
just so that you get some
of
of
your
the guidance from the
expectations.
board in terms of their perspective on it.
Yep, some of your expectations
Yep.
and stuff with what you'd like to see.
Sounds great.
That's fine, Mr. Chair. I had to start someplace, so.
Nope, I think that's great.
I don't have all the answers, but thank you.
You have any other ones,
No,
Commissioner? Nope,
that
that's it.
covers it. Sorry to disappoint you.
No, I thought you said you had a few more topics, so
No, he already-
I thought it was plural. So.
No, he already covered them, so thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Now we're going to circle back to the public hearing. We're pretty far overdue. But with that, we have the public hearing for the local option sales tax for the transportation project update in Wright County. At this time, the information was posted and reviewed with the updated items that were added per the Transportation Committee of the Whole, which was maybe a month ago. Time flies, is that about right? A month ago? Was that? I'm getting the nod, yes. So with that, we will open up the public hearing at this time to had comments regarding the project list for the local option sales tax. Is there anyone here that would like to speak regarding the project list for the local option sales tax? Is there anyone here that would like to comment on the project list for the local option sales tax? Last call. Would anyone here want to comment on the project list for the local option sales tax? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at this time. And Chad?
Yeah,
so
so
you have any comments?
Nope, just a reminder that out of the committee of the whole meeting, we, the recommendation from the Transportation Committee of the Whole was to update the list to just clarify that it addresses all outlying maintenance facilities as opposed to specific locations. If we can be flexible in where land becomes available and locations, so.
So as seen before, usually about every couple of years, we go through this process of updating the list because some projects fall off, some new ones come on as the road system and transportation needs of the county are ever fluid. So with that at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the updated local option sales tax transportation project list.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Shane.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion?
Just, Mr. Chair, for clarification, we do have the resolution supporting that in the packet.
Perfect. All right. So if there's no other discussion, resolution, I'll vote aye.
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 Resolution passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now moving on to the Health and Human Services. We actually caught ourselves up here relatively quick here. The first item is the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the Health and Human Services consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Dietrich, second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda approved unanimously. The first timed agenda item is recognizing HHS Employee of the Month for October.
Thank you, Board. I'd like to invite Paige to join me at the podium. I'd like to introduce our October Employee of the Month is Paige Sangren. Paige is a public health nurse in our collaborative health services team. Paige joined Wright County in October 2021, working primarily with traditional family home visiting and recently taking over lead of the 60+ and Healthy Clinic. Paige continues to strive for excellence every day by demonstrating an extraordinary positive work ethic. Her nominator states, Paige is by nature kind, considerate, and soft-spoken. She meets the needs of her clients and coworkers as best she can. Paige always strives to find the answer to questions. The client's needs are top priority, and she does not pass the task on to someone else if she's able to meet the customer's needs. She sees the request from client's perspective and is flexible and extremely caring when it comes to meeting those needs. In one of these situations, an elderly customer who was declining in health missed his appointment and was in danger of it being canceled. Paige knew how difficult it was for the client to come in that day. She was the lead nurse at this clinic and decided to allow the client to keep his appointment. Paige's shift was over, but she stayed and provided the service. She sent the other staff home, asked the staff she rode with if they were okay to wait. Paige's actions prevented this client from waiting 2 months until the next available appointment. Thank you, Paige, and congratulations on being our October 2023 HHS Employee of the Month.
Nice.
There you are. Would you like to say anything?
No, thanks.
Thank you, Paige, for all your hard work and the great work that you do for the citizens of Wright County.
And to keep in the public health mode, we will move on to Sarah's presentation, if that's okay with the board.
Sounds great.
Information update on public plans regarding release of the new COVID vaccine.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I just have some talking points today, no slides or anything. You've probably heard in the news that the FDA authorized an updated monovalent COVID-19 vaccine. It's both Pfizer and Moderna. And it's going to be released for the 2023-2024 respiratory season, so sort of with flu and when we talk about also RSV. The CDC recommendations are anyone 6 months and older receive the vaccine. It gets a little bit more technical than that, but most people should just connect with their provider and they'll help them figure out whether they need 1 dose or 2 and all of that. Obviously, we still know that older adults and persons with weakened immune systems are at the greatest risk for hospitalization and death, even now with COVID-19. And healthy folks can still experience severe disease. As far as safety, the benefits of the vaccine continue to outweigh any potential risks, and serious reactions to the vaccine continue to be very rare. For instance, a study has found that the risk of cardiac complications are actually higher with COVID than with the vaccine. Let's see. We know that there are different variants circulating right now, and the newly released monovalent vaccine seems to be very effective in preventing disease, or at least or reducing the severity of the illness if someone were to contract COVID-19. And then as far as where to get vaccine, I think this is the biggest portion for you because I know you might have constituents asking. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned this in a previous meeting, or at least I did at a Safe Schools meeting. We're not in a public health emergency anymore, so we do not become the primary vaccinator for the community. We are really here to fill gaps and provide access to vulnerable populations. So that means those that are underinsured or uninsured. And we have specific programs that are funded by the federal government to help us provide vaccine to those populations. And the other population that we tend to work with are those that have physical limitations. So like homebound folks, for instance, or folks in long-term care. A lot of our long-term care facilities have already found partnerships with pharmacies, but we have a few that we work with. And then, of course, we also support the jail in partnership with Centricare. So if you have folks asking, for instance, can they come to the highway department? One, we have considerable road construction that would make that very difficult. But those are not the plans that we have anymore. People should be seeing their primary providers. They can access vaccine at pharmacies. We have already contacted all of our providers. We know that they are providing vaccine-only appointments, so they won't have to pay an office visit if they ask for a vaccine-only appointment. And all of that can be handled very easily for them. Their insurance company should be covering it because it's part of the Affordable Care Act. And then we're working through a process. We anticipate that we'll be able, at least for our Vaccine for Children's program, that we will get our full reimbursement. We're not exactly sure about Medicare, but I would imagine we'll also get our full reimbursement because a single dose is about $130. Which is pricey. For comparison, we usually pay about $40 for a flu vaccine. And then we also get an administrative cost. So again, there are websites. There's www.vaccines.gov that folks can go to and we are making sure we send information so that all of those sites are up to date so people can find vaccine locations. Can I answer any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just a quick question. Are you required to give an informed consent fact sheet that weighs the side effects with the benefits? And that's
Always, with all
Yes.
vaccines.
Yeah, I just assumed that, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, happy to answer
Thank you.
that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, director's comments.
Yes, I don't have an exhaustive list, but I have a decent list today. First of all, I'd like to bring forward a proclamation. I don't believe it's in your packet because we're still waiting from the state to tell us what the actual day of the proclamation will take effect. However, October has historically been County and Tribal Financial Worker and Case Aid Day. So I would ask, and I'll just read one paragraph from that, and that's that it is important to recognize the valuable services county and tribal financial workers and case aides provide for Minnesotans by delivering culturally responsive case management and accessible community services with a person-centered focus. Our financial workers are actually, speaking about, job descriptions and things like that, they're eligibility specialists here in Wright County. So our eligibility specialists and case aides are being recognized in October. And I would ask that the board move that we recognize October as Financial Worker and Case Aide Month. And we'll follow up with the date when we have it.
Very good. At this time, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Commissioner Dietrich, second by Commissioner Holland to declare October as Financial Worker Month in Wright County.
Thank you. We do have some special things planned for them up on second floor, so it's always a fun time. Also, I'd like to.
I'm going to take a vote on that.
I'm
though,
sorry.
first. No. We want to formalize it, and please do inform us as to anything that you have up there on the second floor, because I definitely would like to stop in and
sure will.
congratulate the hard work, especially in the last year plus. It's been a challenge like no other for them.
It has.
All right, with that resolution, Commissioner Holland.
Aye.
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 Aye. Resolution passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, board. I'd also, since Sarah was just up here, would like to recognize that Sarah has been reappointed to the opioid, this is one of the acronyms, I'm only going to say the whole name once, Opioid Epidemic Response Advisory Council, ORAC. Sarah was chosen again. I believe it still holds true that she's the only county representative on this fairly prestigious board that the governor set up a few years ago in response to the opioid funds that was coming to the county and how to distribute those funds, among other things. So Jody Harpstead has sent me a letter reappointing Sarah to that ORAC board, and I believe it's through 2026.
Yes, and then I will be done.
We had a conversation, really? It's a heavy lift, but Sarah does a great job, and she does a great job representing the rest of the counties in Minnesota in her role.
Yeah, Chairman Vetch, I just went to the Shack retreat in Wilmer, and I have to say, every time I'm with other public health people and commissioners, Sarah is just really like our ace in the hole. Everybody really admires her and looks to her and always tells me how lucky Wright County is to have her. So I just want to recognize her for all the hard work she does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I was just looking behind me to see if we have Tamara Chigolo here. Oh, she is here. Tamara, if you'd like to come forward. I just want to let the board know that she is being recognized by the as a child welfare worker this week, and she's been a long-standing child social worker in our area, and it's great that she's being recognized on a statewide level as a child welfare worker. Would you like to say anything, Tamara?
Sure, I'd love to. Good morning. I've been here, it will be 30 years next April, so I'm one of the old timers. And the thing that has changed the most is technology. When I started, we used to write out case notes, which was fascinating. And then I had to learn how to use a mouse and the computer, and yeah, it was pretty good. And then we had these big maps of Wright County when we'd go on home visits, and we would be like pulling over and looking, and yeah. So now it's just amazing, the technology. So yeah, it's been a great place to work. I live in Delano, so you are my commissioner. So.
You're welcome anytime in the Situation Room if you have anything to talk about.
Oh, but really, seriously, I love it.
Thank you, Tamara.
I would like to just mention, Tamara's been I think for a long time you were our, what was our teenage?
Teen parent social worker. One time at a meeting, I introduced myself as a teen parent, and everybody's like, I don't think so.
But just to that end, it's kind of amazing when you talk about the changes in social work, like, we have far fewer teen parents now than we did, many years ago. So when you look at some of the things and I would say part of it is our county involvement and, just societally and things like that. But I mean, we used to have a full-time caseload of teen parents. We don't have that anymore. So we've moved Tamara on to other great things to work with our county citizens.
Yeah, we had 40 at my caseload at one point, and the public health, we would go out on visits. They're amazing. So, Yeah.
So things do get better sometimes. So this is one of those, I would say, a gold star area. So thank you, Tamara. You did a great job.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. Thank you, Tamara.
All right. I also wanted to bring to the board's attention that Trailblazer approached HHS management a few weeks ago and asked whether they, and I know two of our commissioners sits on the Trailblazer board, and so they talked with us and said what we'd like to do is provide a promotion to Wright County for the Health and Human Services clients that you see for free Trailblazer rides when there's not another financial means for them to obtain that. For the boards, and, you know, for one of the things that we do in HHS is that we do have Trailblazer tokens that we purchase at the going rate for Trailblazer tokens, and we will give those to clients when they come in and they don't have another way to make appointments and things like that. So in this case, they came forward, they're asking that we provide this opportunity to clients when they present and there's no other financial means. It will save the county some dollars in not providing those Trailblazer tokens. It doesn't replace things like, you know, medical appointments, because if they're in medical assistance, they would have other means of getting to those appointments. So this is just an opportunity for our clients to take advantage of the Trailblazer system to be transported for no cost to the county. It's not a no cost, it's a no charge. And that's Gary Ludwig, the CEO, was very clear that there is still a cost to providing these rides, but there's no charge to our clients right now. So this is something I'm not sure how far off. We just started it in the last week or so. It took a little bit to figure out how this was all going to work. At this point, what we're doing is when we talk with somebody, one of our workers talk with somebody that they feel doesn't have a good option for other transportation, we'll provide that name to Trailblazer. Then when that person calls them, they will look at their list. So our goal was not to have it be a heavy administrative burden on our HHS staff. So I think we've avoided that. So we'll see where it all goes. I believe they'll be keeping some statistics on this promotion.
So any other comments?
Jamie, how long will that program, is it a pilot, kind of looking at a time?
Well, I would say right now the proposal is to go through the end of the year. Then I think we'll both probably, maybe November, December, we'll maybe review it to see how it's going for both us and for Trailblazer. You know, sometimes like, it is difficult sometimes at Trailblazer, what they're able to provide for clients, like if a customer is getting out of jail, let's say that day, and we give them tokens, well, oftentimes Trailblazer needs 24-hour notice. So, you know, those kinds of things. So there are still gaps in service. I wouldn't say this is going to mean that there's no transportation gaps. There's still things out there that are going to be difficult to find transportation. But I think it is an opportunity for Trailblazer to get a better handle on what HHS, on the people that we turn away because we don't have opportunities. One of our goals for them would be to maybe determine, you know, of the rides that we're sending over that way, how many can they actually provide and how many can't they provide? You know, is this an opportunity for them to look at the work that they do to see if there's opportunities to provide more different transportation based on the needs?
So this is largely a push by MnDOT to leverage Health and Human Services rides and right now they're trying to look at the data that they have and then the actual data that we have by actually facilitating the rides and seeing if that data actually correlates, and then how feasible it would be, to your point, of actually getting the people where they need to go at the times they need to be there, and how much of those we actually could facilitate. So this is kind of one of those steps, and we'll probably be doing it incrementally over time too, and depending on how large or unlarge it is, it could continue shorter or longer. So.
And I would say, I think that there's maybe been a mischaracterization. I think this was, you know, government and like the Department of Transportation is pointing at, oh, HHS has all these funds, like almost like this unlimited pot of funding for transportation. That's not the case. And a lot of the transportation needs we have are currently being met by, waiver right, medical assistance, those kinds of things. So I think while there's a lot of funding for HHS or transportation, the funding available for something like this is probably much smaller than what some of the transportation providers have been led to believe.
And that's where we're trying to do an education that there's a certain amount of people that are on like PMAPs that would be excluded from using these rides, because that is done through their PMAP provider who determines where those medical rides would be.
And a lot of the rides don't occur in Wright County, or if somebody needs to go to the Veterans Administration, or somebody, we have our new urgent, mental health center in St. Cloud, well, that they wouldn't be able to be transported across counties necessarily.
And that's where we also had a lot of discussion at the Trailblazer Board, because a large amount of our population is either going to Hennepin or Stearns County, which are the two major medical campuses near us, and we're not able within our public transportation system to get them to either one of those facilities without having to partner with another public transportation system, and then being able to get them to the appointment and back within a business day is almost unfeasible. So that's why right now they'll probably continue to use non-emergency transportation through the private market because of where the public transportation lines are drawn in our area. If there was a major medical campus in Wright County similar to Centricare or North Memorial, that probably would be a different case, but we don't have a major medical campus in the county, so therefore we'll not be able to actualize a lot of those Health and Human Services rides, at least in the short term.
However, I may introduce some individuals that hadn't used Trailblazer before to Trailblazer. So yes, we're kind of just in the exploratory phase right now. I also wanted to bring your attention to, Adult Mental Health Initiative. We're part of a consortium with the other 7W partners, which is Stearns, Wright, Benton, and Sherburne. And it was just really unfortunate this year, and the only reason I'm going to bring this forward is because there might be some communication that might have Wright County listed on it as to DHS or to Commissioner Jody Harpstead about our dissatisfaction with how this has worked out. So earlier this year, DHS provided the opportunity for the Adult Mental Health Initiative to apply for mental health federal block grant dollars, and we received them. So Minnesota received them. We were planning to use this funding toward our outreach position and efforts, since the community support program funding is almost used up for the year. So that funding was split between all the 19 AMHI groups over Minnesota and over the course of 3 phases. Counties provided DHS with the information that we needed to get the contracts in place, that these dollars could then go and support those contracts. DHS has yet to execute the contracts necessary for us to utilize our first phase of funding, and have acknowledged that it's unlikely that they will be completed. So basically, we're foregoing the first $157,000 that would have been coming to our 4-county area to support our mentally ill people that we share across the 4 counties. So it's just a kind of an unfortunate situation. We feel like we did what we needed to do. The state was allocated these dollars. We just can't take advantage of them because the contracts weren't executed timely. So I believe there might be some communication going to Jody about where the counties are at with this, and that if that's the case, that you as commissioners should be aware of it. So, and that I'm assuming that you're all in support of a letter or some other communication about this.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Also, on a happier note, we were awarded $70,000 to our, it's through public health, but actually our social service supervisor, Diane Erkins, wrote the grant. So we received $70,000, we received $70,000 from, and I'm just trying to look here, is it UCare? Medica. So this is in addition to the other grant dollars that we were awarded previously. And at this point, if my understanding is correct, we have about $220,000 that can now support that co-responder program that the county approved, the board approved as in our budget session, and actually moved it up to September. And I really do want to tell Diane how much I appreciate the work she's put on this, because she really has been very forthcoming in having grants coming our way for this important program. So this was the one that we were waiting on, and we did get the approval for that funding. And in case you're going to ask, I do believe that we can use it this year once we get things kind of worked out. So we don't need to save it for next year. So because I know there's some question about how the funding would work insofar that the county approved starting the program in September this year versus January.
Well, that's great. That'll get us at least close to about 18 months, possibly a little bit more of a head start on this program of funding. So,
and I was remiss because UCare also provided us $50,000 on top of the Medica. So thank you, UCare, as well.
Yeah, thanks, Diane.
And that's all I have for today.
All right, thank you, Jamie. All right, moving on here, we'll move to the items for consideration back there. We are now on to the committee recommendations. We had one committee recommendations to approve the recommendations from the September 18th Committee of the Whole regarding the ARP. There was a list of different recommendations on there. I can read them if the board members would like. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve those recommendations.
So moved.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Dietrich, second by Commissioner Holland to approve the recommendations from the September 18th ARP Committee, or the Committee of the Whole regarding ARP. And no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It is great. I know that the one big thing that township allocation will be huge in helping them with a number of their surface transportation projects. I'm excited to be able to communicate with my townships as well, as I'm sure a number of you will as well. All right. Next is the advisory committee updates. I would ask that we keep it relatively short here because we have another meeting here that starts in about less than 50, or about 15 minutes, and I want to make sure everybody has 5 minutes so we can, to get their things together so we can start on time in there. So Administrator Kelly?
I will be brief. We did have a great meeting with the city administrators and county administration staff on the 21st, discussing county business and having a good discussion about area issues. Wanted to welcome Kelly Kozlowski to administration. I hope you've all had the chance to meet. Started with us on the 26th. Safe Schools on the 27th went out. Good to meet with that group. I was there to talk about our upcoming career day that we have on the November 9th date, or 8th date. A lot of interest thus far in that being the first of the 3 of those career days. And 28th was a busy day. We had supervisor training and updates on the legislative session. And then, of course, it was great serving at the pork chop lunch that day. So always enjoy that day. Nice to meet with staff and get their input on things. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Administrator Kelly. Commissioner Catchmark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended an Emergency Services Board meeting, attended a fair appreciation get-together at WECO's. There was about 200 people there, which is the most they've ever had. That was a good event. A Fair Board meeting last night, and Mayor's meeting, some of us attended a week or 2 ago. And that's all. At the Fair Board, we just talked about the ARP money that we were going to vote on today for them, and that got approved, so that is appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to have a little bit better being able to share my DC experience and all the legislators I got to meet with. So I guess I'd like to kind of push that down the way, being that I had some health issues last week when I returned, so that I can share exactly what took place.
For
But it was a really, really, really good time to be there.
And this might be something we can discuss too, maybe moving some of these advisory updates to the workshops and just kind of being able to carve out maybe 15, 20 minutes at the beginning and being able to do that versus doing them at the end of the, maybe just shorten this up here, just things that are more time sensitive, and then doing more of a detailed discussion at the workshops.
For especially things like this. Thank you.
That'd be great. I'll keep it short here. Trailblazer meeting the other last week. Ridership is up again, so that is good. We are continuing to increase our ridership. We could probably grow it exponentially. We have a lot of demand, but the shortage of being able to get buses and drivers makes growth challenging. We also, Wright County Economic Development Partnership met Friday last week. We had a good discussion about the EDA's strategic goals and how the Wright County Economic Development Partnership can help facilitate them. So they are ready to go with it, and Jolene is very excited to be able to partner with us on that. So I think we're going to be able to accomplish some good things.
And thank you for the newsletter.
It's all
Attended the XL Energy Breakfast, as you guys did, and got a lot of good information from that. And then spent 2 days in Wilmer last week at the Shack Retreat. Like I said before, the most disappointing part is that's when the state rolls out the funding of what all the counties are gonna get, and they are way behind. So you could tell the very frustrated public health people that went there for that reason. And they said they blamed it on new staff, so they couldn't get that information out. So, but it was a really very good, good conference.
All right. I was told I had to share more information at the end.
You're fine.
By some constituents, so I actually put some stuff together, and I get the most allotted time since you guys are quick. So, one comment on the Xcel Energy Breakfast, just to learn about the advanced technology for nuclear going on. Also, that the Sherco plant, just for clarification, I thought that was important. That's not going to be mothballed. It's going to, they'll still be using it for the capacitator to even out the energy flow so there's no spikes. I didn't know that. You know, the concept of shutting down the coal plant, it won't be running coal at some point. But so that was really, there's really a lot of good information that was shared at that meeting. So I'm glad that most of us could attend that. I also attended our Central Minnesota Emergency Medical Services meeting. There are 8 regions that were created by the state that provide the training for emergency medical services to our police, our fire, our even through schools, ambulance services, sheriff's departments. So it's 11 counties for the central region. And just for history's sake, it was first funded 20 plus years ago with state seatbelt dollars, which has, thank goodness, gone way down. But the state has failed to kind of put increased or adequate funding on an annual basis in a budget line. And so they're always struggling for funds. They employ currently just 1 coordinator per region. So we have 1 coordinator serving 11 counties and all of those, you know, emergency medical services in there. And they provide equipment, they provide training, and they also, make sure I get all this right, they also do the critical incident debriefing. When there's been a big incident, they are the ones that come in, volunteer professionals to come in and assist in those situations, which has been found to be very, very, very helpful. So, and in that piece at the end with the funding, I just want to say we had state legislators there so that we could lobby them and so that they can understand we just need a consistent source of funding. In essence, if a grant, you know, you can't use grant money for the coordinator position, she might not have a job at the end of the year if the funding isn't there from the state. So it's just really important. That was a big item that we discussed with the legislators that were present. Also moving to, I did attend the strip till field day down in Waverly at a farm last week. That was put on by Wright County Soil and Water, U of M Extension, the EPA, and Centra Soda. It was a well-attended event. I wasn't able to stay for dinner, but they had an equipment demonstration, lots of education on soil health, water quality, and crop yield, and you know how those things can work together, that we can do things, you know, keep improving in that area. And so I was really glad to be able to attend that. Our Great River Regional Board of Trustees met last week as well. I'm sure you guys are probably aware of the cultural debate going on with the content of books in school libraries or public libraries. We're on the board, we get the feedback, we get the comments that are submitted to the library for our review, and then we have public comment time period. So, so in response to that, the board decided to have a subcommittee of content review subcommittee, and they're reviewing kind of our policy and what the criteria is to curate the collection of books and materials in the library. Just kind of the policy, and then what happens if there's an appeal, if books might not be allowed to be in the library if someone requests it, or someone challenges a book that is currently there. So there's 2 kind of avenues there. So then we're just looking at those policies and how to address some of those concerns. And that we'll be having a workshop October 10th at that meeting. It will replace a regular trustee meeting. It'll be a workshop. So the public is welcome to attend. They won't be able to have public comment during a workshop or input during the workshop, but they can be there to listen. So let me see, Wright County Community Action. is going through a update to their strategic plan. And so I got to participate in a pre-planning phone, Zoom kind of discussion moving forward, and I'm looking forward to that. They do some really great things when you look at all of what Wright County Community Action does. I recommend everyone go on their website and just look at all of the things that they provide as a nonprofit to Wright County. And they are our community action designated organization, so we do work well hand in hand with them. And I also was appointed to the Finance Committee for that board. And then I also wanted to say that our Midwest Regional Forensic Crime Lab received an award. I'm just going to read this so I get it right. The American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors recognized the Midwest Regional Forensic Laboratory, our collaborated crime lab, for the 4th consecutive year as a Project Foresight Maximus Award winner. The Maximus Award is given to the top 15 performing forensic science laboratories in the world. The 2023 top performers are laboratories operating at 90% or better of peak efficiency. This year, the Midwest Regional Forensic Lab was the only laboratory in the state of Minnesota to receive this award. So I just want to thank all the previous commissioners and sheriffs that initially started this crime lab, and working together to have it's a big, huge impact on our public safety. It's an investment, but they do a great job, and I just wanted to give you that feedback that this is, something I have positive moves forward into the future and continues to be supported well.
Thank you, Commissioner Dietrich, for those updates. And I think I'm going to carve out going forward on the beginning of every workshop 15 to 20 minutes so we can get a much more robust advisory updates, and we'll start that off right after scheduled meetings at the start of the meeting. So we'll do it on the front end, because I feel more often than not our advisory committee updates get shortened or get missed or don't get the attention that they should. So I think if we are able to have a much more robust conversation at the front end of our workshops, it would bring it much better justification. So if everybody's good with that, I think that's a practice we're going to try out for a while.
Sure.
All right. If no other business is to come forward, we'll adjourn the county board meeting at 10:24.